Welcome to the Harrison Public Library. I'm Galina Chernik, Library Director. We are excited to welcome the Ambassador of the Republic of Latvia to the United Nations, Andris Pildegovics. We look forward to his insights on the war in Ukraine, as well as its effect on Eastern Europe and NATO. After the Ambassador's presentation, we will open the floor for questions and answers. Participants are encouraged to submit their questions via chat. Our staff members, Giovanna and Dan, will help Ambassador to monitor the chat. Now, let me introduce to you our honorable guest. Born in 1971 in Vladivostok, Russia, Ambassador Pildegovics is the son of the university professor in Asian languages, Peter Pildegovics. Ambassador himself earned an undergraduate degree in Chinese history and language studies at the University of St. Petersburg, Russia, in 1994, spending the 1990-1991 academic year studying Chinese at the Beijing Foreign Languages Institute. He speaks Latvian, Russian, English, and Chinese. In 1995, he pursued diplomatic studies at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University, and then at the Foreign Service Program at Oxford University during the 1998-1999 school year. Ambassador Pildegovics joined the Latvian Foreign Services in 1994 and spent his first year studying in Stanford. Back in Latvia the following year, he served as an assistant to the State Secretary of the Foreign Affairs Ministry from 1995 to 1996, and then as press secretary to the Foreign Affairs Ministry from 1996 to 1998. After receiving his Foreign Service Studies certificate from Oxford in 1999, Ambassador Pildegovics was promoted to head of the Middle East and Africa Division of the Foreign Affairs Ministry. Then he went to work directly to the President of Latvia, serving as a foreign policy advisor from 2000 to 2006, and as a Chief of Staff of the President's Chancery from 2006 to 2007. In July 2007, Ambassador Pildegovics began service as Latvian ambassador to the US, and in May 2008, he was accredited to Mexico as well. Ambassador Pildegovics took up the position of Ambassador, Permanent Representative to the United Nations in New York in September 2018. It is my great pleasure to present to you Ambassador Pildegovics.
Thank you so much, dear Galina Chernik, for this very warm introduction. And I want to greet everyone from the Harrison Public Library Network for inviting me to share some thoughts with you on the current situation. I wish we could have been discussing some more future-oriented topics, what we usually deal with at the UN, be it innovations, be it technologies, be it development issues or climate. But currently, of course, all our major thoughts, all our attention now is drawn to one particular subject, and this is the war. This is the war with what President Putin and the leadership of Russia started at the end of February against the sovereign neighbor, Ukraine. I represent a country called Latvia. Latvia, as you know, is a member of the UN for the last 30 years. We are one of those captive nations which were destroyed during the Cold War and which recovered freedom at the late 80s in 1990 following the nonviolent singing revolution. Our country was a member of the League of Nations before Second World War, and later on was destroyed by the Soviet Union and by the Nazi regimes. And one of the lessons what Latvia drew from history from the 20s and 30s is the following one. We tried to be neutral, we tried to be non-aligned, we tried to be very diplomatic, very quiet in the late 30s, and then we thought that the winds, cold winds blowing from the totalitarian regimes, from the Nazi Germany, from the Soviet Unions, will not affect us if we remain kind of under radars. And that policy of non-alignment, neutrality failed dramatically. Our country was occupied 3 times by brutal totalitarian, authoritarian regimes, and we lost 1/3 of our population due to the Holocaust, deportations, forced exile of the Latvian people abroad. And actually, our population today is about the same size as it was before World War I and before World War II, largely due to these geopolitical shifts and the very unkind geostrategic military conflicts. The lesson what Latvian drawn from the history when we regained independence was very, very clear. We wanted to turn the page and we wanted to become members of the EU, of European Union, of NATO, allies of the United States. And largely over the last 30 years, we have succeeded in our approach. We are now since 2004, we are members of NATO, we are members of the European Union, and we firmly believe that every country in Europe should have this legitimate sovereign right to choose own future, own alliances, own set of values. And we are strongly behind every country's dreams and wishes to charter their own future independently. In that regard, we've been strong supporters of Ukraine, strong supporter of Georgia, Moldova, and all other countries which gained their full freedom after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Of course, as I said, this provoked, this unprovoked, this very cynical, very brutal war, which has been started by President Putin against Ukraine, we believe is a turning point for the international community. It is a kind of San Francisco moment for the UN, and Latvia is very dedicated to do utmost to help Ukraine to win this war, to repel the aggressor, and to ensure that the UN Charter is intact, to ensure that we are not going back to the 19th century world when only handful of powerful empires were deciding the future of the smaller nations and on the continents. We are very concerned, have been concerned about the buildup of the Russian forces around Ukraine for months. We have seen this crisis coming for years. Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, we have been shouting to the international community for many years that since 2009, President Putin is very outspoken about his vision of the restoration of the Russian Empire. We've been telling to the world very openly that this policy of appeasement to Russia has to be reversed, that President Putin cannot be trusted as a credible international partner. But in many regards, our warnings were disregarded. We were considered alarmists. We were considered kind of traumatized by our pre-war experiences. Many Europeans, many international diplomats considered that our concerns are exaggerated and many people were living in a kind of wishful thinking. They thought that through international trade, through engagement, through dialogue, they can appease the ruler of this growingly authoritarian state, and they thought that that policy could succeed in appeasing the dictator. Unfortunately, our worst predictions have fulfilled since then, since February 24th. And now, by this weekend, we will be living in the third month of the war. It's war, it's invasion, it's aggression, nothing less. And Latvia has been doing utmost to help Ukrainian people, to help Ukrainian leadership, to repel the aggressor. We've been doing this politically, militarily, humanitarianly, in a humanitarian way, even before the war had started. I want to mention a few facts. Even before February 24th, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, we've been providing Ukraine with military help at a rate of about 1/3 of our annual defense budget. Latvia is a small country. We are a country of about 2 million people, and our defense budget is roughly 1 billion euros, about $1 billion in US currency terms. So we've been providing, even before the war, our military support to Ukraine has been roughly around $300. We've been providing anti-tank, anti-plane missiles. We've been providing training. We've been providing munition and all kinds of military materials. We've been, of course, at the forefront of the building international coalition, repelling Russia's aggression politically. Speaking about the UN, I'm representing Latvia at the UN. We've been quite successful in rallying UN membership against this Russian invasion. As you might know, 3 times over the last 6 weeks, General Assembly voted on aggression. There were 2 resolutions adopted at the beginning of March, and the last one was about the suspension of Russian seat at the Human Rights Council of the UN. The first 2 votes were very, very strong. We had 141 votes condemning Russian aggression, and on expulsion of Russia from Human Rights Council, we had 93 votes. So, and more than that, for instance, last week we had 4 votes in the smaller UN institutions, and on all 4 accounts, Russian representatives were outvoted. So these are just examples, testimonies, what we are trying to do to isolate Russian aggressive behavior and to prevent Russian representation, Russian initiatives in the UN. Speaking about the war, we firmly believe that first of all, we have to be very clear about definitions. As I said, this is aggression, this is war, this is invasion, nothing less. And we are very vigilant, reminding UN officials, reminding UN representatives and other member states that now this is agreed language, and we should not call we should call spade a spade. We cannot use euphemisms, situation in Ukraine, crisis in Ukraine, military operation in Ukraine. This is a language of aggressor, and we should not use any language which sort of shifts the blame from aggressor and lessens the plight of the victim. The second thing is, as I said in the opening, we believe that this is a war, and the war should be won on the battlefield. and we should do utmost to support Ukrainian armed forces. We raise these subjects very strongly within NATO, within European Union, and we believe that all kind of equipment, all kind of training should be offered, should be provided, and we are quite gratified with the current trend, and of course it's absolutely up to Ukrainians to decide until when Ukraine gonna fight. We believe that it should go on at least until Russian occupational forces are repelled beyond the line of February 24th. But the ultimate decisions, of course, should be made by the Ukrainian leadership. For us, it's a Bible, it's a sine qua non that nothing should be decided about Ukraine without Ukraine. Nothing should be talked over Ukrainian heads, and this should be taken into account in all formats, be it UN, be it NATO, be it European Union, or any other international organization. We believe that apart from military support, we should continue maximum sanction policy. We have adopted already 6 packages of sanctions within European Union. Of course, we should be realistic. European Union, it's a very big organization. We have altogether 27 sovereign countries. So the speed of adoption of decisions is not necessarily very, very fast. But the Baltic states, Poland, Slovakia, Czech Republic, we really push for as robust sanctions as possible. When we cannot agree instantly on unified decisions by all EU 27, then we go with our unilateral decisions. For instance, Baltic states have made decision to cut natural gas supplies, buying natural gas from Russia. In the future, we will use only LNG gas supplied from other third countries. We do the same regarding closing of our ports to the Russian flag vessels. We cut off post services and etc. etc. We cut banking cooperation with Russian banks, and we believe that these economic sanctions should be built up. We really have to do utmost to support victory over Russian forces on the battlefield, but also to cut off supply of funds. We have to stop Putin's military machine by cutting economic cooperation. It's the discussions within the European Union ongoing. As you might have seen in the news, the president of the European Council, Charles Michel, visited Kiev yesterday, and the visits from the European leaders have been going on now for a few weeks. On the state level, on the highest political level, the 3 Baltic presidents were the first to visit Kiev, and we're really pushing hard within the UN to encourage the leadership of the UN and the world leaders to pay those political visits to Ukraine, to support President Zelensky and to support the people of Ukraine. I hope that the president of the UN, Antonio Guterres, will also visit Kiev in the foreseeable future. The third track, what we believe is very important, is to continue isolation of Russia within international organizations. Russia has been outvoted from the Council of Europe in Strasbourg. I mentioned the vote in Human Rights Council 2 weeks ago here in UN, and we believe that this work should continue. We have to punish the aggressor, and this policy has to continue until Putin's regime will change its aggressive policy. We believe that this is a long struggle. We believe that we have to be very, very patient. We have to be very perseverant. We should not kid ourselves that the problems can be solved by some ceasefires or can be solved by some high-level meeting between leaders or by some mediation. Fundamentally, we see that President Putin's ideology is against the international law. It's against all post-Soviet commitments. It's against the Charter of the United Nations. So we will have ahead of us a quite long period of deputinization. It will require a lot of international outreach, and a lot of international unity. It is quite regrettable, but I have to mention this, that unfortunately quite a significant part of the population of Russia is currently supporting aggression against Ukraine. It's not, all freedoms have been destroyed by the Putin's regime inside the country. There is no free media, there is no any kind of debate, discussion within the parliament. There is no any credible opposition. So it's a authoritarian country which is now drifting very rapidly towards totalitarian model. And as we know from the history, of Nazi Germany and some other regimes, these changes will be very painful and they will be very gradual. And we will have a lot of traumatic experiences before the majority of the Russian people will wake up and will understand the whole magnitude of the crimes committed by the Putin regime. In Latvia, we see lately a lot of influx of Ukrainian refugees. The numbers in our country is bigger than 30,000, and people of Latvia show incredible solidarity, supporting Ukrainian refugees. Mostly those refugees are women and children. We try to organize education for them. In Latvia, by the way, Riga is one of the few places where we have Ukrainian secondary school, which has been operational since 1990s. Ukrainian language education funded by the state budget of Latvia. We try to offer employment, social protection to the Ukrainian refugees, and the solidarity initiatives are really, really impressive. These are not only government-funded policies, but they are supported by Latvian NGOs, by the Latvian business companies, and we certainly committed to continue this. We see also quite a significant movement of media people fleeing Russia, and a significant number of journalists, media workers writing in Russian, doing analytical job. They also have moved to Riga, and we are trying to support their operations from Latvia, because we believe that in this situation of censorship in Russia, this kind of support is very, very crucial, and it's going to be long term, and it will encompass all kind of modern and traditional media outlets. We definitely believe that this is the time also for consolidation of the alliances, be it European Union and be it NATO. We see that this Russia's aggression against Ukraine has also ignited debate about NATO membership in Finland and in Sweden. We welcome this development. We believe, as I said in the beginning, that every country willing to join organizations, be it European Union, be it NATO, should have this chance. And the same goes also for Ukraine. We strongly advocate for a Ukrainian European path. We will strongly support giving European, as we say in the diplomatic language, giving European perspective to Ukraine. And we hope that this status will be given this year, and negotiations between Ukraine and the European Union will be started on building new level of partnership. So this is, we believe this is really the situation when the world is on the crossroads. We think that the Ukrainian crisis, this is not a local affair of Eastern Europe. It's not a local affair of European continent. The consequences of this conflict are very meaningful for everyone, for bigger and smaller countries. It's certainly an issue which is of very important for the United States, for the UN, and we try to. We are very happy that the United States are back in the UN. We see more robust, more strong leadership of the United States again in the United Nations. We believe that this is the moment when we have to unite all continents, and we have to be very clear that the current world crisis, be it food crisis, food insecurity, be it fuel crisis, be it finance crisis, all those manifestations of the world crisis, they are resulted from caused by the Russian aggression against Ukraine. Our response, military support, sanctions, isolation of Russia, this is our response to the Russian aggression, and we will not weaken our pressure on Russia before we succeed together. We believe that Ukrainians will win this war, will prevail. We are amazed by the heroic struggle of the Ukrainian people, and we believe that we have to do utmost to support them in this just war, in this just struggle. We don't know how long this struggle will go on. We certainly should be prepared for more Russian lies, more Russian violence. We should be prepared for basically for everything. We cannot exclude anything. We cannot exclude that Russian forces will use biological, chemical, tactical, nuclear weapons. We should be prepared for that, and we should be prepared to push back the envelope, as we say in the diplomatic language. We see that Russian behavior is akin to the behavior of a bully on the street, and this policy can only be responded by united, strong, and firm response, and showing that we are united and we are ready to support and lend support to Ukraine in this just struggle for their freedom, for their dignity, for their identity, and for the peace of all the world. With your permission, maybe I will put a comma at this moment. These being my important words of introduction, and I will be very happy to engage in the Q&A session with you. Thank you. I hope you can hear me. I try to open now the chat.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Shall I read the questions?
If you'd like, otherwise we can read them for you, whichever you prefer.
Well, maybe please,
I'll
you
start
choose.
us off, and then Galina
Yes.
and my colleague Dan. So we have a question here from Joan Caton. What chance does Ukraine have to repel Russia?
Well, I think the chances are good, and we have seen over the last 2 months that Ukrainians have very strong motivation to defend their country, and we've been trying to help them with the modern weapons and weapon systems, and I think they have all necessary important prerequisites for winning this war. On the other side, we see that Russian forces have fairly low level of morale. We see that they also less competent than we had expected. So we should not underestimate, and we should not overestimate the Russian armed forces in this regard. Of course, it's a very bloody war. I don't want to sound cynical. I don't say that this war should go till the last Ukrainian. It's up to the Ukrainian leadership to decide. But we believe that Ukrainians can win this war. They are fighting for their territory. They are fighting for their homes. They are fighting for their language, for their identity. And it's a just war for them. And I think it is doable, but of course it will require a lot of sacrifice in blood and treasure, but it is it should be, this war must be won, because otherwise this war will open. Victory of Putin's Russia over Ukraine would mean that the world is going back to the 40s and the 30s of the last century, when dictators, when tyrants can completely disregard international law, can disregard borders, can disregard identities of the people, and can subjugate the whole countries. Of course, this potential or hypothetical victory over Ukraine will expose a number of countries to Russia's blackmail, to Russia's neo-imperial adventures. That would increase pressure on Moldova, on Georgia, on countries in Central Asia, on Kazakhstan. And of course, we know from the history, we know from the Nazi Germany history that those aggression against and victories of the smaller countries can provoke Russia to go further. And it's a very, very slippery slope which has to be stopped.
Okay, more questions coming through, and I'll just read them in the order. And Galina, please, if you want to read any, let me know.
Okay, I will take the second question. Okay. As you know, it is some sort of miracle that the collapse of the Soviet Union did not end up with a major level of bloodshed. Do you believe that what is happening now and inevitable consequences of this?
Well, I think that this war could have been avoided. We believe that it's not a COVID situation. It's not something. It's not a tsunami or an earthquake, which is caused by the forces of nature. We believe that the dissolution of the Soviet Union was the blessing. We think that it has been done. It had to be done. And Latvia has worked very, very tirelessly to separate from the Soviet Union over the last 30 years. I want to be very, very clear. We used to have 40,000 of the Soviet troops on Latvian territory, 40,000, 40. And it took us a lot of effort to ensure that these foreign troops would leave Latvia. We took a lot of effort to destroy, to demolish former Soviet military bases, some Soviet military infrastructure, just to raise any opportunity for the former colonial masters to come back to Latvia and to use Latvia as a polygon for further expansion. And we believe that this war could have been avoided. And we've been very open, and we've been very ready to sit down with Russia, be it within the NATO-Russia Council or other international organizations, discussing mutual concerns. We completely reject any assumption that this war is caused by the NATO enlargement. Before Russia's war against Georgia, there was zero NATO footprint on the Latvian soil, for instance. Only after annexation of Crimea, NATO decided to put some very, very small contingents of NATO forces in the Baltic states. I'm basically speaking about a few hundred people, 500-600 NATO military troops in each of the Baltic states. So the war is a conscious decision by President Putin and his leadership, and they have unleashed these demons of war, these demons of the imperial Russian Soviet ideology of expansionism, and it has not been in any way provoked by the West or by the neighbors. I believe that this is a crime. It's a crime committed by the Russian leadership, and it's a completely obsolete ideology. Thinking in Russia that the glory of the country is based on the expansionist territorial policy, and very obsolete, very wrong thinking that Russian people can dominate the neighbors, that by law or by virtue of nature of history, they have some kind of special right to dictate their wishes or their policies to the neighbors. For me, this is a completely mind-boggling what Russian leadership is telling to their people today. They're telling that there is no such a nation as Ukrainians, that there is no such a country as Ukraine, that Ukraine, the name of Ukrainian has to be changed entirely, that there is no such a language as Ukrainian. For us, this is a completely racist approach, which is obnoxious, which has to be condemned, and which should be put in the dustbin of history. Regrettably, tragically, but this is the current face of Russia. The world should know about this. We should not kind of gloss over and think that this is a kind of misunderstanding, or this is a kind of misreading of the Russian intentions. Intentions are very clear, and President Putin has been telling this for quite a while, but just people in the West didn't pay attention to that. His thinking is that Russia is a dominant power. He sees that there are about three dominant centers. This is in the world: China, Russia, and the United States. And the rest of the world is just kind of followers, and the rest is just has no any voice to shape their future. And we fundamentally opposed to this idea, to this notion. And we believe that Ukrainians, in that regard, the Ukrainians are really fighting the war of all people who challenge domination of just 1, 2, or 3 hegemons in the world.
Thank you. Okay, I have another question. You said earlier in your presentation that the Baltic nations were warning about Russia's potential for aggression. What did you see at that time?
Well, we saw the buildup of the Russian forces around the territory of Ukraine for months. Since September 2021, we saw that Russian forces were being amassed around the perimeter of the Ukrainian borders. We saw a huge buildup of the Russian military in Belarus. More than 40,000 of Russian troops were moved into Belarus. And of course, we saw the complete lack of any transparency on behalf of the Russian forces regarding those buildups. Of course, we knew that from the past that Russian propaganda cannot be trusted. We saw a lot of disinformation by Russia about military drills, about withdrawal of some of the Russian forces from certain positions. We saw that Russians are trying also to hide some of their presence around the borders of Ukraine. Well, it was abundantly clear also from the statements of the Russian officials. And we believe that those statements should be taken seriously. We cannot trust all of them, but we clearly could see intentions of the President Putin to implement regime change in Kiev. And we still think, we still see that this is the ultimate objective of the Russian Federation, to subjugate the whole of Ukraine, to change the leadership, not only on the regional level, what we see every day across the occupied territories of Ukraine, but ultimately to change the leadership in Kiev. And we have been warning all of our allies that invasion was imminent, that it was coming. Some trusted us, but some didn't. And over the last few weeks, we have seen how some of our European allies have been adjusting their thinking, their understanding of the developments, and also seeing how reckless our European policies have been, for instance, in terms of energy dependence from Russia, how reckless we have been in allowing Russian influence in Europe in many regards, how poisonous has been Russian propaganda in the media field around the world. This realization has come to some quite lately, but it's better late than never, and therefore we think that we have to punish both countries' aggressors, both Russia and Belarus. I haven't talked much about Belarus, but we believe that this accomplice of aggression should not be forgotten. Dictator Lukashenko has grabbed power for more than 20 years. Basically since 1994, it's almost 30 years. And he has, de facto, Belarus has lost independence. It's an accomplice of aggression against Ukraine. And we believe that accountability for the crimes committed by the Russian forces in Ukraine will have to be raised against the Belarusian leadership as well. I have not talked about this accountability in detail, but we think that this is really one of the most important areas where international community can get involved. We support strongly investigations by the International Criminal Court, by International Court of Justice, by European legal service. We support funding for those investigations. We have started our national investigations in Latvia, interviewing the refugees from Ukraine about the war crimes, about atrocities, about alleged rapes of the Ukrainian women in the suburbs of Kiev. And we certainly will push strongly for international scrutiny, investigation, accountability measures. I don't know exactly what kind of tribunal we're going to have for trials of the perpetrators of those crimes. Would it be a kind of special tribunal or something under the Hague courts? But we think that impunity will not be possible, and we will do utmost to ensure accountability for those crimes perpetrated.
Thank you. Next question. What can the West do that it has not done to make the war in Ukraine too costly for Putin?
Well, I touched a little bit on that. First of all, we believe that we have to provide the weapons to Ukrainian armed forces. Anything what they ask for, we believe it should be provided. And we don't really see now the difference between, some arguing are that we should give defensive weapons and we should not give offensive weapons. We think that under the current circumstances, there is no big difference between offensive, defensive weapons. We believe that all what Ukrainians are asking, be it planes, be it helicopters, be it artillery systems, be it missiles, anything should be offered and provided, and pretty much anything what is available in the Baltic arsenals of armed forces have been given to Ukrainians. Protection, of course, protection against biological, chemical, nuclear weapons. As I said, it might sound dramatic, but we should be prepared for all kinds of eventualities. Second thing is robust, very, very strong sanctions. We think that we still help funding of the Putin's war machine by buying Russian oil and gas. I'm talking about as the European Union. We think that we should cut dependence on Russian minerals as soon as possible. We are in this kind of sunset clause provisions. We are cutting supplies of coal and oil and gas. It's a gradual process, but we believe that this has to be done in a more expeditious way as fast as possible. Of course, I have not talked a lot about humanitarian support to Ukrainians. This is a huge challenge. We have currently more than 1,000 UN representatives supporting Ukraine on the ground, Ukrainians on the ground. We try to do it also with the refugee flows in Europe. Any possible way to support Ukrainian plight with employment, with social protection, health conditions, of course, healing of the warriors, repairs of the munition, these expressions of support are very, very timely and very, very urgent.
Thank you, Ambassador. As I told you, we are streaming live your presentation in our high school, and I have next question from our high school. How has the recent passing of the law allowing the ability to repeal Latvian citizenship of individuals who support Russian war crimes and human rights abuses in Ukraine change how the conflict is socially viewed from a Latvian perspective?
This is a very new piece of legislation. It has been adopted just literally today. So we don't have any kind of history of application of this law yet. But it is again, and today, by the way, Parliament also adopted a resolution calling Russian war crimes in Ukraine genocide. So again, on the highest legal and political level of the Republic, there is very clear definition of the Russian war crimes against Ukrainians from the Latvian side. For the Latvian public, this war is really huge subject. In my generation, we have never seen war so close to our borders, and I just want to remind the viewers that we don't have a direct border with Ukraine, but the flight time from Riga, from the capital city of Latvia, to Kiev is about 1 hour. So the distance is really close. So we feel a lot of sympathy. We feel a lot of solidarity with the people of Ukraine. When it comes to the composition of Latvia, we have quite a multi-ethnic society in Latvia, and we also have a quite significant non-ethnic Latvian population. About 30% of Latvian residents, Latvian citizens, belong to different ethnic groups. We have Ukrainians, about 80,000. We have Belarusians, ethnic Belarusians, about 60,000. And we also have quite significant ethnic Russian population. Of course, there are different level of information engagement among ethnic minority groups, but I think this law is a quite clear political manifestation that those citizens of Latvia, or those people who have acquired be it residence permits or temporary or permanent or citizenship of Latvia through different ways or schemes, if they will side with the aggressor state, if they will be vocally supporting regression against Ukraine, that their legal status will be reviewed, and the Latvian Republic will not give refuge to the people who are advocating for the dismemberment of Ukraine and advocating for the further neo-imperial adventures of President Putin.
Okay, next question. If strategic planning from Russia was so evident, as you just said, in that case, couldn't the United Nations have played a role in bringing world leaders together and taking a stance to ensure peace before Putin entered or took such a selfish stance?
Well, it's a great question. And this is exactly what international leaders have been trying to do since September last year. There was a string of visits to Moscow. US, European, Asian leaders have been visiting Moscow, have been talking to President Putin. We've been discussing European security architecture. We've been discussing ways how to support the peace process between Russia and Ukraine, so-called Normandy format talks between French and German leaders and President Putin. There were meetings within this framework of Minsk negotiations, and all those efforts were futile because President Putin had his own mind, and he made this decision to invade Ukraine already in the second half of the last year, when military operation had started. So everything has been tried to prevent this war. Of course, we cannot directly get involved in this war because Ukraine is not part of NATO. NATO is not in a military conflict directly with Russia, but we believe that we have to do utmost, we have to do everything to help Ukraine to win this war and to defend itself.
Thank you. Talking about NATO, can Ukraine's membership in NATO be expedited? Would NATO membership be enough to change the balance of this war?
Latvia has been in favor of supporting the Ukrainian membership in NATO since 2009. Most regrettably, there was no unanimity on this position within the alliance. A few important NATO members were not ready to give Ukraine action plan to start negotiations. And during some periods, Ukrainian leadership has not also been particularly focused on that option for different reasons. I don't think that NATO membership is on the table right now in the middle of the war, but we certainly think that we cannot shut NATO door. We can anyway revoke this so-called open door policy. And I mentioned just briefly that currently we believe that there is a good opportunity for Finland and Sweden to join the alliance. This is a peaceful alliance. This is not aggressive alliance. It's not offensive against anyone. We believe that the future of Ukraine belongs to Europe, and in terms of the motivation, we think that the prospect of Ukraine belonging to the European Union is probably is a very important motivator for Ukrainians to sacrifice and to go through this very tragic period of the war. We think that Ukrainian membership in the EU is a realistic goal. I hope that I will be able to welcome myself, Ukraine, in the European Union on my watch. But of course, it will have to be decided when the war will be over. But definitely we reject strongly any Putin's vision that he can prevent any country from becoming a member of the European Union and NATO. It should be decided only by the people of the respective nations.
Our time is running out. I have one more question for you. You were saying that if Ukrainian army would be able to defeat Russian army, they should move beyond Ukrainian territory. Please elaborate more on your thoughts.
Well, to be precise, my thought was that Ukrainians, we should not settle down to anything less than removal of the Russian occupational forces beyond the line of February 24, when the war had started. The rest will have to be agreed by the Ukrainian authorities. What would be the status of the Donetsk, Lugansk regions, the future arrangements regarding the Crimea. This has to be decided during the negotiations. But we certainly believe that any ceasefire, any kind of frozen conflict, which will freeze the situation as of today, for instance, or anything which would endorse Russian military presence on the territories beyond February 24th line. We would believe this would be an invitation for the further conflict. The Russian forces will take this pause to regroup. Russian forces will be rebuilt, they will be reamassed, and a few years down the road we will have another war, and President Putin or anyone in charge of Kremlin will try to push the ultimate boundaries of the Russian Federation further south, east, west, in all other possible directions. We believe that aggressor has to be stopped. We cannot accept further dismemberment of sovereign states, and we have to be crystal clear, and we have to increase this level of pain on the Russian forces, on the Russian economy, until they are stopped and the aggression is reversed to this February 24th line.
Totally agree with you. Thank you so much for your time, for your analysis, for your insights on the current war situation in Ukraine. And we have a comment. It was a wonderful program. The ambassador was so forthcoming with his analysis. Yes, indeed. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for your questions and participation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this invitation. So once again, I stand ready to, if you have some individual requests or questions, please get in touch with us. We are on 50 Street East, 333 on Manhattan, a few blocks from the UN. And using this opportunity also, let me thank all Americans for building NATO. We believe this is a vital institution. This is a vital link between Europe and the United States. The world is not a safe place, so we have to work together. We have to protect the world together, to protect democracies, to protect alliances. It's a win-win alliance for Europeans and for Americans. And this year we celebrate the 100th anniversary of Latvian-American relations, diplomatic relationships. So I wish to extend invitation to everyone to visit the Baltics, Latvia, including this year or next year. You will be very welcome. And I hope that one of my favorite sayings is that those who have met twice will meet again and again and again. So I look forward for the second opportunity. And thank you again for supporting Ukraine, for supporting NATO, and for supporting peace and stability around the world. Thank you, and all the best to Harrison Public Library readers.
Thank you so much.